We are calling this weekend a contemplation weekend. That's not really a gimmick, although it might seem like one. Contemplation is the traditional word for that ultimate state of meditation, at least in the Western Christian tradition. That state in which one goes beyond simply meditating on God or on the supreme reality or the ultimate truth in a dualistic subject-object manner. It is being absorbed into the object of meditation, and the object of meditation being nothing less than the ultimate reality. Now, in the East, it's clear that the ultimate reality is not an other to begin with. In the West, they start out with the idea that God is wholly other, and therefore one has to get to know this being, this supreme being that is so qualitatively different from what you think you are, that there has to be some major effort that goes beyond whatever you can imagine or conceive in order to be able to reach some kind of attunement or resonance with God. But in the East, that's not the case. In the East, the goal is to reach your authentic self, simply that. And the beginning stage of meditation arises simply because you have been in ignorance of that. And the result of being in ignorance of who you really are, meaning you're living in and with and through an inauthentic self, a false self, that was installed in you in childhood, which we tend to call the ego, because you have lived in a false self that has not been properly attuned to reality as it truly is, your thoughts and your behavior have been inaccurate, and that has led to suffering. Right? This is karma. And so if we want to be done with suffering and lead a life that is free of karma and not fall into the same traps that the ego would tend to cause us to fall into again and again, then we want to exit from the false self and from all traces of identification with it and discover and abide in and as the real self. And that real self is none other than God or the Buddha nature or the Tao or emptiness or the plenum, the fullness. There you can choose any number of words, and all the different traditions of East and West have their own final term for ultimate reality, and it doesn't matter. They all refer to the same. So therefore we are not adhering to any particular spiritual tradition. But because we are living in a postmodern age where many, if not most or all of us, have grown up with a secular education, the new religion for many years has been science. And therefore, people trust scientific data and theories much more than they trust spiritual or religious dogmas or creeds or theoretical models of reality. So for that reason, it is useful to at least indicate to whatever extent is necessary to remove resistances, the fact that quantum physics, which is like the most avant-garde, and there are many levels and interpretations of quantum physics, but to take it at its most current form is totally congruent with the old traditions of spirituality, both East and West, if we take the Western traditions at their esoteric level: mystical Christianity, Kabbalistic Judaism, Sufism, and the Shiite mystical traditions, rather than the external, exoteric Sunday school versions of those religions. If we understand the teachings, they are universal, and they are congruent with those other kinds of approaches that were underground and had to be underground during times of persecution, like alchemy and Freemasonry and various other forms and approaches to spiritual transformation that flourished and became degraded, as have all the various religions. So for those of you who are, for whom it is important to know that what we are doing is scientifically valid, and I think for many people that is the case, and that there is something to be learned from the insights of contemporary science, and from the, let's say, those aspects of science that are not allowed to be made public, okay? I don't know how much people are aware of it, but we live in a time of not only massive overloads of information, but massive amounts of disinformation. And that is particularly true when it comes to science. And most true when it comes to physics, because the realm of nuclear physics in particular is, as we all know, weaponizable. And anything that can be turned into weapons is going to be classified information and not made part of the public education for people who are wanting to study those subjects, even to the PhD level. So understanding that also, and the censoring of the development of sciences, of certain sciences, in particular that relate to consciousness, because of the weaponizability of the use of consciousness for many different reasons, including mind control, etc. Remote viewing, remote control of apparatuses, and various other uses of consciousness that are not part of a spiritual tradition, but nonetheless are being developed, not for the purpose of transcending the ego, but for purposes of ego mastery over other egos, which is not something I advise, but it is happening, and it's creating a lot of karma of its own, as we know. Because of that, also, there is a lot of information to be gained that is actually useful to yogis who want to develop their intelligence and their capacities for mastery over consciousness. That I think it's important that we do make use of, and that we not censor that information once we can glean it accurately in terms of what has been left out of the let's say, the publicly admissible paradigms of science that are not complete and not accurate. And to the extent that we can fill in those gaps and then apply them in a spiritual context to the transformation of our own consciousness, then it will serve to accelerate our own internal development and our capacity to create an energy field that is sustainable and that can help in the restoration of planetary existence. So it's with that in mind that the understanding of using the information of quantum physics, which also includes that of electromagnetism and understanding of complexity theory and chaos theory, nonlinear dynamics in general, and various other related disciplines, can help us to increase our understanding at an ever more subtle level of what has to happen internally in order to attain the highest level of realization and sustain it. So I want to be clear that for this weekend, one of the the balances that I will try to keep in an accurate way is that between theory and practice. And this is always a very difficult balancing act, because the theory, the more we have an accurate paradigm of what we are doing and why we're doing it and who are doing it, then the more successful our practice will be. But the practice is what's important, not the theory, and you can get there without any of this theory as well. But a Western-oriented intelligence that has been brought up in that kind of a secular scientistic worldview may find it more easy to get beyond their own questions and resistances to phobias to the God word or its equivalents, and be able to feel more comfortable in those spaces that we may have to describe using terms like light and Shakti, energy, and power. But this is about power. There's no way around that. We're talking about mastery over the illusion that is the phenomenal plane. And so there is an ethical constraint and component to that. But this is something that we have to come to terms with, which is why there's a dharma, and why there is an ethical superstructure that goes along with this development to make sure that one is able to safely use the powers that may be granted through the meditative process of transcendence of the ego, and not allow whatever traces of ego are left to appropriate for its purposes those energies, because that would lead to more karma, more suffering, and would vitiate the gains that would otherwise be made from the process.